All right, so today we're going to dive into something pretty fascinating.
Right.
It's a story that's unfolding right now as we speak, actually.
Right.
And it all revolves around buses in the state of Karnataka in India.
Okay.
We've got a bunch of news reports, some government data, even some like anecdotal stuff that we've picked up, which just kind of paint a picture of what's going on.
Oh, interesting.
Basically, we want to understand how this big policy change, this thing called the Shakti scheme, is affecting people's lives on the ground. So are you ready to hop on board?
Absolutely. Let's go.
All right, so picture this Tuesday morning, April 8th, 2025. You're at a busy bus stand. Could be in Belagavi, Devondra, Habali. Doesn't matter. The place is buzzing. There's this energy in the air, and it's all because there are more women than ever
Wow.
heading for those state-run buses. And that is exactly what the Shakti scheme is all about: free bus travel for women across Karnataka.
Game
Changer,
changer.
right?
Definitely. It's turned into something much bigger than just a policy, I think.
Right. It's like you said, a total shift in how people are moving
Mm.
around. Exactly.
So let's throw some numbers at you.
All right.
Before June 2023, the four main state transport corporations, the ones that handle all these buses,
Right.
you've got the KSRTC, that's Karnataka State Road Transport Corporation,
Mm-hmm.
the BMTC Bangalore Metropolitan Transport Corporation, NWKRTC Northwest Karnataka Road Transport Corporation,
Okay.
and KKRTC Kalyana Karnataka Road Transport Corporation.
Oh.
All combined, they were dealing with about 93 lakh daily riders.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to today, April 8th, 2025, and bam, we're looking at a whopping 116 lakh riders every single day. That's a jump of 23 lakh people
Wow.
every day. Now, crunch those numbers over a year, and we're talking about something like 840 Crore extra trips.
It's hard to even picture that many people.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It's like transporting the entire population of Mumbai every year, and all thanks to this one policy.
That's the thing that amazes me. The sheer reach of this initiative and the instant change it brought about.
It's about more than just getting from point A to point B. It's giving women options they didn't have before. Freedom and access, that's the core of it.
Exactly. So imagine a woman who, before the scheme, would have hesitated to take that bus trip. Maybe it's to a nearby town for work or to visit family, even something as simple as going to a temple.
Right.
It all adds up. Before Shakti, that was a financial barrier for a lot of women.
It makes sense.
But now that barrier is gone. No wonder the Transport Minister Ramalinga Reddy is so pumped about it. He's calling Shakti one of the state's most successful programs, and for good reason.
Yeah.
We're talking over 350 crore free rides provided. That's a total ticket value of over 8,400 crore rupees by December of last year.
The numbers don't lie. This is impacting lives on a huge scale.
Exactly. We're seeing a whole new level of mobility, all thanks to this one bold policy.
Now, that's a pretty insightful takeaway.
Right. It's amazing. But here's the thing about big changes. They often come with unexpected challenges. And that brings us to what we're calling a bus-sized jam. Because while Shakti is all about getting more people on buses, the existing bus fleet wasn't exactly ready for this massive wave of new riders.
Right? You can't just suddenly have millions more people using a system without some impact on the system itself.
Exactly. And to really understand what's going on, we need to talk about the buses themselves, the nuts and bolts.
Okay, the hardware.
So at the start of 2025, Karnataka had about 26,000 buses in its fleet.
All right.
Now, just like any machine, these buses go through wear and tear, they get old, they need repairs. It's a natural cycle.
Of course.
And as a rule of thumb, about 10% of the fleet needs to be retired every year.
Makes sense.
This ensures routine maintenance happens and older buses get replaced. We're talking about 2,600 buses that need to be swapped out annually just to keep things running smoothly.
2,600, that's a lot of buses.
And here's where things get interesting. For almost 4 years prior to May 2023, under the previous BJP government, not a single new bus was added to the fleet. Zero.
Wow.
In fact, the total number of buses actually went down to about 21,000.
So the fleet was actually shrinking while the demand was likely growing.
You got it. Imagine the pressure on those aging buses. They were already working overtime, and then bam, Shakti comes along, and the number of riders skyrockets.
That's a recipe for trouble.
And the Transport Minister Reddy is not mincing words about this. He's pointing fingers at the previous administration, saying they basically left them with a depleted fleet. And now they're trying to handle this huge increase in ridership with a system that was already struggling.
I see. So he's arguing that this current crisis is a direct result of past decisions.
Exactly.
And what are the consequences of this? What's it like for the people who rely on these buses every day?
Well, imagine you're on a bus heading to work or back home, and suddenly the bus just stops. breakdown.
Oh, no.
You're stranded on the side of the road, especially in areas where there aren't many other options for getting around.
Yeah, that would be a nightmare.
And even when the buses are running, they are packed. I mean, we're not talking standing room only. It's more like human Tetris. People squeezed in just to fit.
Human Tetris. Wow, that paints a vivid picture.
It's the reality for a lot of commuters, especially in the northern parts of the state, where there aren't as many alternative transport options.
So you're saying that this issue is even more pronounced in certain regions?
Exactly. In places like Belagavi and the Karnataka region,
Right.
the NWKRTC and KKRTC, those are the main transport providers.
Right.
And they pretty much have a monopoly on public transport in those areas. There aren't many private bus operators or interstate services like you find in the South.
So when those state-run buses break down or are overcrowded, the impact on daily life is much more severe.
It's a big deal. People rely on these buses to get to work, school, hospitals, markets, everywhere. It's their lifeline.
And without a reliable system, it disrupts everything.
It's a tough situation, but there is some hope on the horizon. The government is considering a big investment to try and fix this.
Okay, so tell me about that. What's the plan?
Okay, so they're talking about buying 4,000 brand new buses.
4,000. That's a huge number.
It's a big commitment. It'll cost them around 2,000 crore rupees. That's roughly 50 lakh per bus.
So a significant investment.
And Transport Minister Reddy is pushing hard for an outright purchase rather than leasing the buses. He says leasing could end up costing them more in the long run.
Makes sense to think long term.
Now, the big decision day is coming up fast. The cabinet is meeting this Friday, April 11th, 2025, to discuss this proposal and potentially give it the green light. It's a make-or-break moment for public transport in Karnataka.
It's a pivotal moment for sure.
The proposed distribution of these new buses is also interesting. They're planning to allocate 700 buses each to Belagavi and Karnataka, recognizing the urgent need in those regions.
It seems like they're trying to target the areas facing the most pressure.
Exactly. The southern districts are set to receive 600 new buses, with the rest being distributed based on ongoing assessments of demand. So they're trying to be strategic about it.
That's a good approach, but 2,000 crore rupees is a lot of money, especially when you consider all the other big projects the government is funding. Things like free rice power subsidies, unemployment benefits. It's a balancing act for sure.
Oh, yeah. It's a huge financial commitment. The cabinet has a lot to weigh before making a decision.
So it's not just about buying these new buses. It's about allocating resources and deciding where to prioritize spending.
Exactly. And it's really interesting when you look at the contrast in transport options between the north and south of Karnataka. It highlights why this bus plan is so crucial, especially for places like Belagavi and Karnataka. In the north, it's like NWKRTC and KKRTC are the only game in town.
Yeah, like we talked about, they have a near monopoly in those areas.
Right. People there don't really have other choices when it comes to public transport. I even heard this joke that because buses break down so often in the north, there's been a boom in roadside tea stalls. They call it bus stop brews.
Bus stop brews. That's a bit dark, but I guess it's one way to cope.
It's a way to make light of a frustrating situation, I guess. But it does show how reliant people are on those state-run buses. When those buses aren't working, it throws a wrench in everything.
It underscores how essential a reliable transport system is for daily life.
Totally. Now compare that to the south. In places like Mysuru, Mandya, Chamarajanagar, you've got more private bus operators catering to those who can afford to pay, and there are more interstate routes connecting Karnataka with other states. It takes some of the pressure off the state-run buses.
Ah, so there's a bit more variety, a bit more choice.
Exactly. It's like having a full buffet of transport options in the south versus a single, maybe overcooked roti in the north.
I like that analogy. It really drives home the difference in transport accessibility between those regions.
And it makes it clear why the focus of this new bus plan is so heavily on those northern districts. They really need it.
Absolutely. So we've talked about the challenges with the fleet and the regional disparities, but let's talk money.
Right. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of who's paying for all of this. Because the Shakti scheme, while incredibly empowering, does come with a hefty price tag.
It's not free to provide free rice.
Exactly. By December of last year, the lost revenue from tickets had reached a staggering 8,481 crore rupees.
Wow, that's a big number.
Now, the government has been reimbursing the transport corporations for these lost ticket sales. They paid out 6,543 crore rupees, but that still leaves a gap of nearly 1,700 crore.
That's a significant shortfall.
It is. And for the current financial year 2024-25, The budget allocated for Shakti is over 5,000 crore rupees, with monthly payouts supposed to be around 417 crore.
A huge chunk of change.
But here's the thing, we're hearing rumblings that the transport corporations are worried about potential delays and shortfalls in these reimbursements.
So even though the money's allocated, there's no guarantee it'll arrive on time or in full.
Exactly. And that can throw a wrench in their operations, maintaining the buses, paying staff, all that stuff.
It makes sense. Consistent funding is crucial for any large organization, especially at something as essential as public transport.
Absolutely. And on top of these ongoing costs for Shakti, we've got this 2,000 crore rupee plan for new buses.
Right. The upfront cost of upgrading the fleet.
And that's just the beginning. We also have to factor in the long-term expenses like fuel, which has been getting more and more expensive, maintenance, and staff salaries. It all adds up.
It's a continuous financial commitment.
It is. Now they have added over 4,300 buses since Shakti started, including some electric and luxury models. But some experts estimate that the state might actually need closer to 15,000 new buses to truly meet the current demand.
15,000. That's a lot more than 4,000.
It puts the scale of the challenge into perspective. This 4,000 bus plan is a good start, but it might just be the tip of the iceberg.
It sounds like a much bigger and longer-term fleet renewal is needed.
That's what the numbers are suggesting. And of course, there's a political dimension to all of this. The opposition is criticizing Shakti, calling it a drain on taxpayers and blaming it for the transport corporation's financial woes.
A classic political debate.
Minister Reddy is hitting back, though, saying the real problem is the previous government's neglect of the fleet and the rising costs of things like fuel and salaries. He argues that Shakti itself is not the root of the financial strain.
So two different narratives about the same situation.
Exactly. It's a complex issue with a lot of moving parts. Attributing the blame to one single factor is probably an oversimplification.
Right. It's important to look at the bigger picture and consider all the contributing factors.
So far, we've been talking numbers and policies, but to truly understand the impact of Shakti, we need to hear from the people actually using these buses. People like Saraswati, a vegetable vendor from Hubballi.
Right. Let's hear those personal stories.
So Saraswati used to spend a big chunk of her earnings just on bus fares to get to the market. Now, thanks to Shakti, those rides are free. She's saving money that she can use for her family or to invest in her business. She calls it a blessing.
That's wonderful. That's a real tangible benefit right there.
It is. But she also talks about how crowded the buses are. Sometimes she has to squeeze onto a seat with someone else just to get on board. It's not always comfortable.
So it's a trade-off. Free rides, but with some downsides.
Right. Saraswati's story really captures that duality. The financial relief and increased access are amazing, but they come with the challenges of an overstretched system.
It's a reminder that even well-intentioned policies can have unintended consequences.
Definitely. And it's not just the passengers who are feeling the impact. Think about the bus drivers and conductors. People like Prakash, a KSRTC conductor who's been on the job for 15 years.
Okay. What's his perspective?
He says he's never seen the buses so crowded. They're running more trips to try and keep up, but the old buses are breaking down more often.
Makes sense. More strain on the system means more breakdowns.
Exactly. And it's not just the buses that are feeling the pressure. The drivers and conductors are working longer hours dealing with frustrated passengers. It's stressful.
I can imagine.
Prakash told us about this incident where his bus broke down halfway to Belagavi. Passengers were stranded angry. It was a whole ordeal.
Not a fun situation for anyone involved.
Now the state is hiring new driver-cum-conductors to try and cope with the increased workload.
That's good. At least they're recognizing the need for more staff.
Yeah, they've hired some already and plan to hire even more, but it's a race against time to keep up with the demand.
So staffing is another big challenge that needs to be addressed.
And the overcrowding isn't just about discomfort, it's a safety issue.
Right. When you have that many people packed into a bus, the risk of accidents goes up.
Exactly. There was this incident last year where an elderly woman in Belagavi fell from a crowded bus and was injured.
Oh, no.
And social media is full of images and videos of these packed buses and breakdowns. People are frustrated. And understandably so.
It's a visual representation of the strain on the system.
And remember those smart cards they promised? The ones that were supposed to streamline the whole system?
Yeah. What happened to those?
Well, they're still being evaluated. It's a classic example of how these big projects can face delays.
Happens all the time, unfortunately.
So when you take a step back and look at the whole picture, Shakti is this fascinating paradox. On one hand, it's a huge success story. It's empowered women, boosted ridership, and giving people a new sense of freedom and access.
A testament to the power of a bold policy initiative.
Right. Women now make up the majority of bus passengers. That's a big shift from before Shakti.
It's clear evidence of the impact it's having on women's lives.
But this success has also put a huge strain on a transport system that was already struggling.
It's that classic dilemma. A great idea, but without the infrastructure to support it fully.
Right. And it's not like Karnataka's transport corporations were swimming in cash before Shakti.
You mentioned earlier that they were already facing financial challenges.
Exactly. Minister Reddy has pointed to things like rising fuel costs and staff salaries as major contributors to those pre-existing problems. But he's also argued that if they can get the fleet up to speed, Shakti could actually help the financial situation in the long run. More riders could mean more revenue.
That's an interesting point. So he's saying that Shakti itself isn't the problem, it's the lack of capacity to handle the increased demand.
Exactly. But the question is, can they get the fleet up to speed? That brings us back to that crucial cabinet meeting this Friday. The fate of that 2,000 crore rupee proposal for 4,000 new buses is hanging in the balance.
It's a pivotal moment for sure.
If they approve it, it could provide some much-needed relief, especially in those northern regions that are really bearing the brunt of the current situation. But if they reject it or delay the decision, it could make things even worse.
It could undermine all the good that Shakti has done.
Exactly. And even if they do approve the new buses, it's clear that Karnataka needs a long-term plan for its public transport system.
Right. This isn't a one-time fix. It's an ongoing challenge.
Some experts say they might need as many as 15,000 new buses to really get things on track. They also need to keep hiring and training new staff to handle the increased demand. And of course, they need to figure out a sustainable way to fund all of this in the long term.
It's a complex problem that requires a multifaceted solution.
Totally. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we're left with a lot to think about. The Shakti scheme is a bold and impactful initiative that's changed the lives of countless women. But its long-term success depends on addressing the very real logistical challenges it has created.
It's a powerful reminder that we need to think holistically when it comes to social programs.
Right. It's not enough to just have a good idea. You need the infrastructure and the resources to back it up.
Otherwise, you risk undermining the good intentions.
So what does Karnataka's experience tell us about the balance between ambition and practicality? Is this a cautionary tale or an inspiring example? It'll be interesting to see what happens this Friday and in the months ahead. What do you think?
I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that progress isn't always a straight line. There will be bumps in the road. But it's also a testament to the power of bold ideas and the importance of adapting and evolving as we go.
Well said. So for all of you listening, keep an eye on Karnataka. This story is far from over. There's a lot more to come.
I'm definitely going to be following this closely.
Same here. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a fascinating journey.
It has been. Thanks for having me.
And to all of you out there, thanks for listening.
Until next time,
We'll see you on the next deep dive.
take care.